Right, we are live. We are here. It is me, and it is. Guess who? It's Carlo. He's here.
Just
Right,
about.
Carlo. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Good stuff. Right. So in answer to your question, George, I see you in chat there. What time is everything kicking off? The answer is right now. We had some last-minute technical difficulties. Um,
Of course.
the answer is right now. That's when things are kicking off. So how you doing, Carlo? How you doing?
Good, yeah, busy as always, working on new stuff. Been working on big updates, which are always difficult because particularly as I get too close to the end of them, because little updates are really easy to put on the site, and I just like test things. Sometimes, as I did recently, I put them up without doing enough testing and they break everything, which is a bit of a nightmare. But a big update requires tons and tons of testing before it can go live. So we're almost into the testing bit, which gets a bit stressful. But other than that, same as always, been some nice-ish weather and we're still in lockdown in the UK. So I just keep working on the site as much as possible.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, on the testing front, was it Tuesday or Monday when you put the last thing out? Um,
Yeah.
and unlike you, who has a bizarre American, and I say American because it's like West Coast America,
Yeah.
sleep schedule, I was up early in the morning suffering the fallout of your update that you clearly hadn't run by me, as the normal tests
Well,
happen to go through. But no, yeah, so yeah, these things happen. You fix them, you move on, right?
Yeah, if you're not trying to, if you don't break anything, then you've never tried to make anything. So it
Correct.
happens.
Correct. I guess a bit of an introduction to this new series that me and you are doing. It's called the Tourney Ground, right? We're doing it as the Tournament Ground. Is what it will be labelled as. And I guess we kind of talked about this, didn't we? And we came up with a nice little colourful plan. Ooh, look, colours and interesting things.
That's Mickey's job, by the way, to kind of make a plan of the things that you will see.
Because otherwise Carlo just gives you everything, and to be honest, Carlo's really boring.
Yeah, I mean, if you've seen a 10-minute video by me, it was probably about 50 minutes at one time. So, full warning, if you're watching right now, this is what you get when I am not edited by Mickey. So, full disclosure, if I go off on a rant, Mickey might have to cut me off, or I might just repeat myself 5 times. But that's the way things work. When Mickey doesn't get involved, things aren't great.
I don't know how I got this job for Carlo. By the way, it's by pure fluke. I wouldn't be trusted to do this for anybody else, and to be honest, I don't even think Carlo trusts me to do it. It's just that no one else will.
Yeah, I don't trust myself to do it, so Mickey's the next best thing.
So yeah, we're going to talk about. I mean, we're doing it on Mondays because a lot of what we've seen and a lot of what me and Carlo have talked about is a lot of the tournaments kind of reset on a Sunday night, as in like the rounds finish on the Sunday and the new rounds get drawn. And we want to talk about all the different tournaments that are happening all over the globe, and it's not just TTS ones. This is something that we're looking to progress when lockdown finishes, to show you some of the tournaments that happen in real life, because the site, ASOIAF-Stats.com, does run real life tournaments as well.
Quite a lot have been posted recently. We're getting into different countries around the world, not the UK, starting to move out of lockdown. And we've got quite a lot popping up. Every one of those that you see that has a little flag next to it is a real life tabletop tournament. And it exists somewhere. There are still some TTS events going on, but we've had a big influx in the tabletop ones, and that's brilliant because the site was built for tabletop. The site wasn't built for TTS. It just so happened that it was starting to get popular, and I put most of the work in during lockdown, which was when TTS was popular. But the intention is for it to be used on the day for a real tournament, and for it hopefully to make everything easy for both the players and the TOs.
Yes. And we actually, going all the way back to a long time ago now, the War for the Wall. This is back when Carlo first kind of built the website, was first testing it out. The tournament that the NRG guys ran, kind of as we were being NRG members kind of thing, and that whole shebang. Anyway, we ran it there and it worked quite well. Obviously, you had an absolutely god awful time between rounds 1 and 2.
The tournament worked well. It was very good that we tested it at an event that I was at because the site did not work at that time. Well, the site worked. The pairing system didn't work. It kept repairing players against players that they'd already played before. So, one of those things. I thought I'd tested it, but turns out that when you try and test in a development environment and everybody's called player 1 to player 10, you don't really notice that they've already replayed themselves in the tournament. You're like, oh yeah, that looks good. Everybody's got a match. That's fine. We'll go with it. And then it became a bit of a nightmare on the day, but everything's a lot better now. So, if you look at the dates on those kind of things, you can see that the site is improving quickly. So wherever we're at right now is a case of where do you want us to be in 2 months? Because if you want it, I can probably build it.
Yes, definitely. Now, on to, I guess, bigger, better, more interesting things. All of these things, is great. One thing I would just say, actually, while we're doing the intro, obviously we're live, right? We can answer questions just like it would be if it was a Twitch channel. If there's any questions or anything you want to ask us during the session, just drop a comment in there, and we'll happily talk about that kind of thing. As I said, there's a structure to this, but really the structure is just whatever we feel like talking about as well. And if you've got something interesting, like is Melisandre worth taking in a Stannis list, and you want to shout at Carlo for being wrong or right, feel free. But anyway, the first one I wanted to talk about on our list of tournaments is we did have a little chat about this on in and about the Discord. Is Un Festin pour le Coq, the French tournament that finished last week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A couple weeks, about a week and a half ago now, I think. All the rules are in French because it's a French tournament, which does not help us understanding it whatsoever. But really,
5 rounds. 5 rounds. So
yeah.
that's about the bit that I can get through.
Yeah, 5 rounds.
I would go with no Kickstarter exclusives.
Yes,
I'd guess.
Yeah. I think they have to be on a Song of Ice and Fire builder.
Yeah. There we go.
That'll do. Right then, so looking at the players...
We'll assume no Kickstarters because we don't see a big entry from the Lannisters and we don't see the Mountain That Rides.
Yeah.
So
and in fact, I think...
we'll go with the assumption that that's no Kickstarter exclusives.
Chabelo did confirm that there was no Kickstarters on Discord, I think, in a chat that we had.
Cool.
But yeah, so we see... and I'm annoyed now because something we'll get onto is this, probably. But Free Folk won. I'm annoyed by that because I'm a Free Folk player and I was hoping to be the first Free Folk tournament winner. But
Free Folk have had a recently decent run.
They have.
Yeah.
Now,
so I mean, let's just kick it off. Like for a while, Free Folk have for a long time been the number 1 ranked faction on the site, but we haven't really. It's taken a while for us to record the first Free Folk victory, and a lot of people have said, particularly when the site was first getting some submissions and first getting going, people were saying your site must be wrong because your maths is off because Free Folk can't be the most powerful faction. They don't win tournaments, but we're starting to see it now. We can get on to why maybe they don't win, or win as often as they should when you consider the number 1 ranked faction. But here we are. Free Folk are winning tournaments, and Free Folk are number 1 ranked on the site right now.
They are. I think, Greg's saying there in chat that he was surprised that Belwas, a Targaryen player, up at number 3. Now, what we will do is say, obviously, every piece of data that we look at is obviously going to be biased in some way. Player skill matters hugely. For all we know, Bob Bernard was taking Targaryens, and he's an infinitely better player than everyone else there, and he was not even able to win, but he's able to do much better because he's so good. But we then looked at the lists, didn't we, Carlo? One of the most important things here, let's just jump to the stats panel for you. Let's just look at that entries by faction, and you can see that little blue wedge. That's the Starks. Now, either the French are super big brain playing us here, and they understand something we don't, or what it sounded like a couple of the French players were saying is a lot of the French players wanted to not play Starks in the tournament. They wanted to test things out. They wanted to try a lot of the new Targaryen stuff, hence the Targs being a decent pick. A lot of players wanted to play Baratheons. Baratheons huge, 32% of the play because people wanted to try all these new toys they've got access to. What do you think about that? Do you think that speaks a little bit as to why we saw Free Folk win and why we saw such a weird combination of factions in the top?
So I think basically all these tournaments came. All these TTS ones. So we got. We'll probably come on to them. We've got a German TTS event.
Yep.
We've got what's roughly speaking an Australian TTS event, but that's probably still relatively international. It's probably about half Australian and half international. It was, it's run by out of Australia with a focus on their time zone. But unlike the French event, which is basically a French language event, and the German event, which is a German language event, all these TTS events, they sprouted out of the back of the NRG event, with people seeing that the site has some good uses for running TTS events, and that the TTS mod itself was really gaining steam at the time. It was really taking off. I think that they all had a little bit of a kickback to maybe just how competitive the NRG event was. That was probably one of the most competitive events that's ever been run for A Song of Ice and Fire in terms of the quality of the players entering and like how extreme the lists were, because obviously in real life, a lot of players are limited by what they own, and this is the real first big run out of TTS where like anything goes. If you want to spam the same unit 6 times over, you don't need to buy it, you can just put it on the table. And also the first time that like the best players from each region thought that they were going to enter and show that they're the best player in the world, and they might have been quite surprised that actually, whoa, turns out that there are loads of great players out there. Oh my God, who knew Canada actually had the champion? You know what I mean? Like, who saw that one coming?
Yeah.
But I think that there was a bit of a kickback to that, and a lot of players wanted, even though they were still playing on TTS, they wanted to go to a slightly more casual style. So I think that the French event and the German event that we'll talk about both claim, I've spoken to players who entered them when they were kind of organizing the event, they both claim that they weren't 100% competitive, 100% serious. This was people playing with people that they already knew in a less serious manner. And that is very much reflected in the factions that they took and the list builds that they used, that they wanted to try things out. And I think that variety allowed what is probably still the very best list you can run in the game to not be spammed a million times over and for it to win the tournament.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the big thing. Skunk obviously played Stark, and without looking at his, let's look at his lists quickly. Oh yeah, he ran the Howland Reed 4 Outriders and Cranham Trackers. I think this is a hilariously good list. I actually think that this is a competitively viable list, just to have lots of horses, and some trackers. But then his House Stark.
They're a really good solid unit at 7 points. Like they're undeniably good. But they're a bit more limited in their scope than a more balanced list, and you've denied yourself the opportunity to take a ton of dogs because you can't attach them to a cavalry unit. So,
he came fourth. He came fourth with those lists. His Roderick list is a bit more conventional, although lower on the number of dogs. But that I think that says a lot about Skunk, of course, but also it says a lot about Starks, I think. But yeah, I mean,
interestingly, he won 4 of 4 out of his games when he played with Howland. He lost with Roderick.
Yeah. Now, obviously, that can come down to what round, of course, well, and what game mode.
Mm-hmm.
I think the big thing, and I see some people in chat as well. Bruce Craig is obviously a massive supporter of, and I'm a big supporter of Davos, and it's good to see Davos being picked in a tournament, competitive setting, and ending well. Coming second with a Davos list. We've been saying it for a while. I was Davos's big fanboy, and we were both really disappointed not to see him in NRG at all. He wasn't so much that he wasn't picked in a list as a commander. He just wasn't picked at all, in any way, shape, or form. And it was a big shame. And I think that he's Baratheon's Stannis' side at the moment. I think he's their weapon of choice.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I do find it tough to build on the Stannis side. I think that the Axel Florent NCU for 3 points is hugely valuable right now. So then that takes Axel Florent as an NCU commander out of the pool if you want to run that.
I don't think
Which then
his
means you're
commander
left.
is very good as well. Personally, his cards are okay.
His cards are brilliant. His cards are really, really brilliant. They've got really great synergies, but him as a NCU himself, he doesn't do loads. Unlike his NCU, which you can buy. So you're kind of shoehorned into this, into picking one of the on-field commanders. And I do think that Davos is my number one choice there too. Davos was the highest performing commander of the Baratheon commanders in the event. And we see what we see quite regularly in the event, which is when we have a ton of people rush to a faction, we've seen a massive Baratheon entry, much higher than we would have expected in other tournaments. Their win rate drops massively. This is because most people who are running this new list, this new faction that they're not that practiced with, just aren't as
savvy,
practiced, skilled, whatever you want to call it. They're not as good with the faction as they are with the faction that they normally play. This game is massively about experience, massively about skill. So I think that that you can't just rush to a faction and pick it up just because it's the hotness right now. And we see that whenever we see a faction really low represented, almost nobody's playing it. It performs well because only the die-hard players who have always played that faction are playing it. And when it massively increases its numbers, its win rate drops off really largely because we have these people who are either just testing it out and haven't really thought through their list composition, or they're not practiced with it, or we have a lot of people who just like jump from faction to faction trying to find the best thing in the game, rather than committing to trying to be better as kind of skilled players, I would say.
I mean, on the conversation of Davos as well, Greg says they're losing ours is the Fury is unpalatable as at first. So let's just quickly load these up. These are the cards from Davos, and we can see them there. They're all very good cards, and I think although I would agree, ours is the Fury is a very strong card. I have a couple of issues with ours of the Fury. First of all, it's strongest when you control crowns. Ours is the Fury. You want to have control crowns, so you hit at the highest ranks. Otherwise, you're hitting with a damaged unit. And actually, most of the time in the meta that we're looking at, most of the time, ours is the Fury, you're going to be using, ideally, killing weak things that haven't done much damage to you on the attack. Why do you need ours is the Fury in those cases? Because you're killing something that did no damage to you anyway. You're going to kill it eventually anyway. It's just like a free attack that you're expecting to do a fair amount of damage, but it's not a game swimming moment because you already took no damage. Whereas it's the stuff that the alpha, it just feels bad.
I think that ours is the Fury is a really key card on the Renly side of things.
Yes.
With Rose Knights, with other things like that. But on the Stannis side, you're playing a much more aggressive, Stark-like kind of play style where you're looking to hit things hard enough that they're not hitting back. You can bait with some units. You can still use the wardens and stuff like that to try and tie units up and hold them in place. But them making extra attacks are not pivotal moments in the game. And just getting an attack, which you don't really control where it's going to be and who it's going to be against, is not as impactful as a lot of other things. It's not the same as controlling a whole bonus action, whole bonus activation. It's an action which you have to play when you are already damaged, like you say, unless you got those crowns. But crowns is a weak zone, so like if you're playing around it, that's okay because you have it in hand. But I don't think it's not the biggest loss. It's not the biggest loss.
And I think
not on the Stannis side of things.
Greg says interesting. It's an easy to trigger card in a deck of hard triggers. It's interesting because actually I think although I would agree, I would raise you this one, Greg. If you have flea bottom tricks in your deck, Your units now have much better maneuverability. They're more likely to be in combat because they can get there. You're more likely to have units open for countercharge. You've got other options because your units are closer. Therefore, it actually enables more of the deck. Ours is the Fury is a one-off card that goes, ha, boom. Flea Bottom Tricks, you go boom, and this can lead on to a catastrophic level of my unit is now 8 inches further forward than you thought it was going to be. Or my R'hllor, faithful R'hllor, have just marched 10 towards you. They can, in theory, they could do a 21-inch charge, effectively, on their activation. That's really something that you should be scared of. And in fact, that is something that Starks, with Devastating Impact, are regularly doing, and they say, look, like, I can do this, and people go, that's really strong. You can do that with Davos. With Devon allows you to do that. You can actually do it straight up 21-inch charge. That's pretty good. But yeah, I can see, Greg, definitely the knee-jerk reaction, like, oh, you're taking away the best card. It's hard to value that, and you know, it comes from learning. Actually, for me, it comes from playing Free Folk. I learned that maneuverability from Harmer was the most powerful tool. Her +3 dice vulnerable in the flank is good. Her feinting maneuver is good. But these are all icing on the pudding of what is Force March is incredible and Diversion Tactics is incredible. Maneuverability is such an important key.
The Baratheons in general are so overtly strong and powerful in combat. You know, there's no denying that they are strong once they're engaged. But when you get to a high competitive level, everybody understands this and they just don't engage you. They don't engage you in places where you're favorable, and they don't allow engagements to last very long either.
Yeah.
I have played genuine tournament games recently on TTS where my opponent has two lists. They've got a Stannis side one and they have a Renly side one, and they think that this Renly list is super powerful. It's full of Rose Knights. As soon as they pick it and they put it on the table, I'm literally like, I've won the game. I don't even have to roll a dice and I've won the game. And then I just proceed to maneuver up, collect all the objectives, and then refuse to fight him. And he literally has nothing he can do. And I just hold the objectives the entire game. Now, this is a relatively specific list, specific game mode, but this happens far too regularly. And people need to... But the thing is a lot of people don't understand how to take advantage of how slow and bad some aspects of the Baratheons are. And in high-level competitive play, Davos is just massive. He totally changes the dynamic and means that you can't play that way anymore, and you don't get free wins.
So I've just loaded up the Commander ELO rankings while we're here, because it is interesting. Courtney, we've already spoken about Courtney, and we won't go down that route now. By far the strongest Baratheon commander, and who's second in at number 10? He's in top 10, which is a respectable placement for a Baratheon commander. He's there, Davos. You go further down, you've got Roose. A non-Baratheon commander is good, but that's because people love running Roose for the anti-dogs. And then what? You've got Renly, Lord Paramount's not doing too badly. Loras is there. But anyway, let's go down to the bottom of the list. This is what I'm trying to show you guys. By far, not just the worst Baratheon commander, by far the worst commander in the game. Yeah. He has not made any inroads since the Rose Knights has come out at all.
No, he is so far off the pace that it's unbelievable. He
slowly gaining.
He is as bad as he is for commanders. He is the Targaryens of commanders, right?
Yeah.
Which is he's just not competitive. Yes, you can record wins with him. Yes, he is playable. But and yes, when you look at his cards, it's like, oh my god, look at these combos. This could be so amazing if only my opponent just walked into my trap.
This really obvious Rose Knight trap.
Who's charging Rose Knights in the front? Who's letting you get your triple Rose Knight list? Who's letting you ever get onto the objectives first?
Just doesn't happen.
We saw it in the final of the NRG when Stannis Thousand Lord Commander brought Renly Charismatic Heir, triple Rose Knights, plus Bolton Bastard Girls, and he grabbed horses every single round he could, and rushed for that center. And Ariakas just refused to ever attack. And he completely outmaneuvered. He had got to the objectives first and then just waited out and then bang, destroyed the bastard girls. I've surrounded you. You're completely. I'm on every side of you. And you know what? I'm still not going to attack because I don't have to because I've already won the game. You can win games against these people without ever rolling a dice, effectively.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of new players taking Renly. Camille mentions a lot of new players. I think that might be Bloodraven. Not sure. He mentions many new players will take Renly, which will make the stats worse. That is definitely true. I won't disagree with that. A lot of people play Renly out the base box as well, and we're not here to talk about base box Baratheons, but yeah, they're not good.
But out of all the base boxes, the Baratheons are the worst. Yeah. So if you are talking about people playing on like a limited number of units or whatever, things don't get worse than playing Renly out of the base box with using Stag Knights, not having any Rose Knights, not having any combos. So you're right. It does make things worse, but I really do not believe that that is enough to make his ranking what it is. The largest majority of all our submissions come from both tournament play and TTS.
Yeah.
That's not issues there. So
I mean, look at this.
It's not an answer to why he's so bad right now. It can be a factor, but it's not the reason.
If you flip it on its head as well, I've just jumped quickly to Courtney just to show the difference between the two. Courtney's only recorded 12 less games, and his win rate is 15% higher. Which doesn't sound like a significant increase, but we're talking about a faction win rate. Just changing your commander on the same, pretty much exactly the same army, just changing your commander increases your win rate by 15%.
Yeah, people still run 2 to 3 units of Rose Knights in that same list with Courtney, but you have a whole extra activation, and more importantly, you have tons of counterplay now. That's the main issue. Whereas these other Baratheon commanders, they don't bring any. They don't have the counterplay that you think they have because all the counterplay is based on your opponent falling for a relatively obvious trap positioning. Countercharge is so telegraphed, it's painful.
Yeah.
And all the rest are like, you basically don't get charged in the front, so why will your opponent allow you to use all these triggers? Your opponent, a savvy opponent, will retreat from you whenever possible, so you never start the round in combat.
Couple of questions there. What thought? So George, three-eyed Raven, although just three-eyed. Baratheons are clear strengths and clear weaknesses. That is very true. One of the big things that we've noticed is that they have very clear weaknesses and very clear strengths, to the point where it's so clear that from an opponent you can see those same things, and that's the issue, is that they're almost so transparent that they're easy to see through.
So coming right round on the conversation, Davos covers so many of their weaknesses, and that's what Baratheons need right now. They are so heavily entrenched. Most factions, they want to play to their strengths, but Baratheons have such, like you say, such strong strengths and such strong weaknesses that I think they need a commander to cover up their weaknesses.
Yeah.
And instead, people are playing Renly, Charismatic Heir, who's just going to further entrench their weaknesses while further empowering their strengths. But they're already so strong there that nobody's going to try and fight them. They're just going to not play. They're going to play around those weaknesses instead. And Davos is got all the things necessary to cover those up.
Definitely. So anyway, we kind of went on a bit of a sidetrack about Baratheons there, because it's been a bit of a theme for us this weekend, hasn't it? You just did the Stannis release, which took me about 8 hours to edit yesterday. So if anyone tells me that the videos are terrible and edited badly, I will come to your house and kill you. No, it's we're getting there. We're getting there. It's obviously huge thanks to Yannick for setting us up for that. But yeah, so I thought I'd go back to the Hall of Champions, a place where I'm hoping to be soon, and I think we should talk about the assault on Riverrun, just very briefly. I know it's been a huge chat about this on, what was it, on the Discords, and I think a little on Facebook as well. I want to hear your opinion, Carlo, very quickly and succinctly, if you will. The mountain that rides. The mountain that rides, does it change the landscape, in your opinion? And do you think he will see changes? I think he will. but only on the attachment variant of him. I actually don't think that the solo will see changes. Gone.
So there is, without a doubt, what I would kind of call the mountain that rides effect, which is allowing him massively increases the popularity of Lannisters. Whether or not he necessarily results in increased win rate is a different thing. But as soon as you allow him, he gets picked all the time, and Lannisters are way, way more popular. The win rate of this one specific tournament, you got to take the data that you have with a grain of salt. The win rate of this one particular tournament says that he massively increases the Lannister win rate when played.
Yeah.
They have significantly performed better in this one tournament where they had a huge number of entries, which
Definitely.
in every other case causes your faction to win less often. Everybody's rushed to the Lannisters. All these people who aren't used to playing Lannisters are playing this faction. And yet they're winning more often. They've taken all the top spots. They've become the Starks of the tournament. They ended up in 1, 4, 6, and 7. But, that's a little bit of a lie in that it was a Lannister final. And they were 3 or 4 of the semi-finalists. The Starks were always kind of coming up from behind in that they were, they picked off some other players, but the dominance between the two of them is now huge. Of the players who are in the top 6 who won all their games or only lost one game, you're talking 3 Starks, 3 Lannisters, absolute domination. And yet none of the Starks are picking Kickstarter exclusive stuff. He is what Kickstarter exclusives are. If you say you do or don't include Kickstarter exclusives, you're saying, can you use Mountain That Rides?
Yeah.
Do I think he'll be changed? I hope he is, because he is effectively a limited one crutch unit of auto include practically.
At least in one of your lists.
Yeah.
I don't actually personally think that he's that strong. I don't actually. I mean, I play Free Folk, right? I have Trappers. I don't care. I have Styre. I don't care about him. The problem is he suffers from the same problem that the Wolves have, in that people who struggle to deal with Wolves, who generally speaking, really struggle to deal with the Mountain that Rides. And it just compounds the problem. It's like saying we've given Starks a tool that's really good against certain factions, and then given the Lannisters the same thing, and it's like that's not a way of balancing. That's just a way of pushing things. Like, look at Targs. Targs run against the Mountain that Rides, and they're just sad.
Yeah.
How do they kill it?
So the real thing for me is if you made his solo variant worse, I, as a long-time Lannister player, would still pick it.
Yeah.
You'd have to make it way, way, way worse before I didn't pick it. That's because buying a 4-point cavalry maneuverable unit like that has more value to me than what his actual stats are. Often, I didn't, other than the fact that he charges in and kills dogs, I'm not using him to fight units. I'm not using him to do anything like that. I'm using him to camp objectives while being terrifying to really weak units at the same time. He can terrify archers, he can terrify dogs, he can do these things. But this is where we come back to, like, when I play Targaryens, I pick Jorah. I believe that Jorah is practically the best thing that Targaryens can pick.
Yep.
I know, and yet he's terrible. So why is he the best thing that they can pick? Because buying an activation for 3 points means more than anything else in the game right now. So buying an amazing activation for 4 points when my next cheapest activation in the entire Lannister army is 5, but really for most people it's 6, because those 5-point units are bad without attachments.
Poor fellows are just about...
Everybody's going to take him.
Yeah,
poor fellows inside of a High Sparrow only list
fine.
can find place at 5 points at a budget, but really they want a Kingsguard or they want a Champion of the Faith. They want to be 6 points. Guards want to have a guard captain in them, and that's all your choices outside of going to neutrals. Lannisters are so desperate for a cheap unit that we see people running Stormcrow mercenaries with a guard captain or Stormcrow mercenaries with an assault veteran, even though they're such weird, bad combos.
Yeah.
But you're so desperate for a unit that costs 5 points. that you're willing to do anything for it. So as soon as you offer them one who's really good for 4 points, he's in 100% of lists.
Yeah.
And that's your problem. Nothing should be in 100% of your lists.
Unless it's a base unit. I'm happy for base units. Things like if guardsmen, you know.
Yeah, to be fair, like Lannister Guardsmen should be in 100% of lists. Starks One Swords, 1 unit off should be in 100% of the list. But
or at least
you don't want to have to put like building requirements in, because that's a bit boring. That again is a lack of balance.
Yeah. But I do think the attachment variant is a real issue, because he turns Knights of Castle Rock, who are very good, into like one-shot weapons. He turns them into very actually comfortably. They can one-shot most units. Multi-shot. Yeah.
You're not one-shotting stuff anymore. You're multi-shotting every time you take an activation.
And that's
and you stick him in with Tyrion, and you might even do it multiple times a turn.
Yeah, that is just
crazy.
Just unpleasant.
But it is 11 points, and Walder does exist, and that's a huge, huge, huge shutdown.
Oh yeah. But again, it comes back to, the Death Star unit,
Yeah, it's not a style that I like to play.
It's not, but if you can take Knights of Castle Rock for 11, and the Targs are sat taking Unsullied Swordsmasters for 9, and they are going, oh yeah, look, my Swordsmaster come in and they might kill you because they roll a lot of dice, but they don't do anything else. And then I just go, I just have Gregor in this unit of Knights of Castle Rock, who are more maneuverable, because I get the free maneuver. They are as fast, pretty much, as long as it matters. And they're more heavily armored, and they have massive bonuses. So, I'll take that for 2 more points. I'll just take out guard captains out of those things over there. I don't care about them.
They are less. They have less sustain.
Sure.
Let's be fair. There are some things that those Unsullied have got going for them. If they get charged, the Unsullied are in a better situation than the Knights of Castle Rock.
Completely agree.
Who their effect is all on charge bonus, and even the Mount and the Rides is a charge bonus effect, right?
But if your heavy cavalry is being charged, you've probably already lost. Let's face it.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, back onto tournaments. We got a bit sidetracked there because talking about the mountain. It's good to see a lot of people in chat, chatting away and thing. Hopefully, this kind of format where it's a bit more casual and a bit more chilled, just us chatting, is people's liking. Obviously, give us feedback. Let us know what you think. Both of me and Carla are available on Discord. Give the channel a subscribe while you're here. That's obviously what we want to see. We want to see people engaging with the content. But anyway, the next tournament I wanted to talk about. Let's have a little look. I've got a personal heart in this next one, I think. No, I haven't. We've got the German one first.
We're going not quite on board swords just yet. No.
So the the German TTS tournament they had. Someone wants to know what your hoodie looks like. Give us a close up of your hoodie.
I'm wearing an NRG hoodie, which I got not so long ago. It is Raven's Revenge, if you're looking at the styles.
Move the tassels out of the way. Yeah.
This is Raven's Revenge on, I believe, on charcoal or something like that. I don't like black clothes as much as I'm a bit of an emo kid. Once upon a time, I avoid wearing black, so this is a really nice color to put it on.
Once upon a time.
It's well,
But yeah, obviously, the great work that our mates do over at NRG. You can find their merch shop. I'm sure Carlo will give us a link in chat or drop a link in the comment section at some point.
Maybe if I can work out how this live stuff even works.
This is another reason why I'm here, by the way, guys. Carlo would do this alone, although he's really boring, as we know. But he's completely and utterly a technophobe, which is unbelievable because he runs a website.
Yeah. So if anybody's not aware, I do basically every single line of the code. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of lines of code that make up A Song of Ice and Fire stats. I wrote them all, but I hate technology. I, until recently, didn't even basically have a mobile phone. So, I need other people to do all the technical stuff for me.
He's useless. Carlo is boring. Yes, he is.
Willfully useless.
Yeah, his mobile phone was a BlackBerry that had about 10 minutes of battery
That's
life.
an original. That's a genuine original BlackBerry, not one of those new BlackBerries where they rebranded themselves and remade themselves into. Yeah, I had a genuine BlackBerry,
And
it didn't even use BlackBerry Messenger or whatever.
you know, it had internet, did it? It didn't have internet. You couldn't. No,
It didn't. No, it didn't.
Bloody
It didn't
useless.
connect to the internet.
Anyway,
No.
the German
That was only
tournament.
about 9 months ago. We're not even talking about like a long time ago. Yeah.
So we spoke to Yannick. Yannick is one of the guild members. Who you would have seen if you were here at the start, the guild logo and things like that. We spoke to Yannick about this, and I spoke with Michael, I was known as Psychopath on the Discord, and they kind of said something similar with this tournament. It was a relatively small tournament. They didn't even hit the 16, but it was just a little tournament they did, and he ended up winning. Psychopath ended up winning with his free folk. But again, you know, it was a lot more chilled out. Saying that though, if anyone knows who Larks is, Larks.
You say that, but I mean,
he's running.
Psychopath is running absolutely top tier lists. So I think it's unfair to say that this was, you know, you can come into a game with a more casual mindset or whatever, but this was not casual in terms of meta, at least not at the top. This is skin changer spam and powerful lists, top tier combinations of NCUs.
Larks with his Starks. We know Larks from NRG. He ended up second in the end, didn't he? Came second, but he was in the semis and he got knocked out in the semis by Ariakas, the winner. So I mean,
you know, only person he lost to was the winner, Ariakas.
Frerin, he's another big name on the tournament scene. He plays a lot of tournaments. He's another name I recognise, and he's up there with Free Folk again, putting some good work in.
So there's a lot of really good players in Germany. They are known to have quite a competitive scene. You know, whether or not all these players were playing their most competitive. Yannick on the site known as Tank, you know, he's come quite low down with Baratheons running Davos and Roos. You know, Davos is strong, but Roos is, you know, maybe just kind of like an anti-Stark kind of pick.
Yeah.
He's even named his list is your list is also no fun. You know, like, so
I love
whether or not every single person in this tournament is playing as its most competitive intense meta is one thing, but I mean, we got sidetracked, but there were some really weird lists in the French meta. You know, they really did go off piece. They really did try out new stuff. They may not have been playing no holds barred, absolutely top tier, win at all costs kind of games here in this German one, but they've got top tier lists. Yeah. They are not playing casual. They're not playing friendly. They're not playing, let's just put base boxes on the table. Let's try out new commanders. They're playing the tried and tested best commanders in the game with the best possible lists.
With a couple of tests here and there, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a second list or something else.
At least in the top half, you know, So it's an interesting tournament. A small, I believe that I'd rather play in a small tournament with really top players than a bigger event that has, you know, just like players of completely variant skill level, because you just end up with some bad games. So I'm sure it was a good event, and you know, that's what makes the Germans really quite competitive. They are a close-knit competitive scene. So I was interested to see where it went, and the Germans regard Psychopath as a really top tier player. He placed quite well in the Masters of Westeros.
Yep.
So, you know, unsurprising that he takes a win there with a really top tier faction, and possibly still the highest rated faction in the game. Depends on whether or not you really think that the Starks and their direwolf spam is better or worse than the Free Folk. Questionable.
Couple of new people there. Yeah, Targ's coming 10th. We talked about Targs earlier. Scott, you missed out on our talking about Targs. Chapel, cool. I can't even say his name. Chapel Brock is a guy I played against in the first Builder League, I think it was. Great guy to play against, really fun. But it's
interestingly, in this tournament, if we're talking about Targs, 2 people brought Targs. They had 10 games that weren't mirror matchups, and they only managed to win 1 game. They had a 10% win ratio in this tournament. So that's pretty rough. If they got another win, it was against Targs. Yeah, which is what we saw in the NRG event, where Targs pretty much only picked up victories versus Targs.
Yeah. Right, boards and swords. Then this is not over. This one is still ongoing.
Still going.
Last round is currently on right now.
This entire thing was set up so that Mickey can tell you that he's going to win boards and swords.
That's the plan. No. I wanted to talk about boards and swords because it was like it's the next thing after kind of like it's an odd player number again. We've seen lots of like odd player numbers. I think this is 24, which is not the nicest. 32 and 16 being nicer. But again, we see some good players. Shout out to Sunday, who's in there. He's down there repping. Deoxys, strong player. Psychopath's in there. Who else is in there at the moment? Tony Stark. Tony Stark is a fan favorite of mine and Carlo's. We won't go into why, but he's an absolute legend, and we love to see him playing games. We really. We've also got
doing well.
Yeah, and doing well. Yeah. Who else is in a Coffar? That to back out, unfortunately. Chef Jacko. Yeah, a couple of players from the UK. Larks is down there, playing his Starks, but I think he's had his day. Chris Eustace, commenting. Euron. I know you're in chat, Euron. See, rep in there. So yeah, some good players. Mix of players though. Lot bigger free folk turnout, which is good, and I'm glad. And yeah, as it stands, I'm currently sat in first position. And more importantly, what is so important with this particular tournament: Feast for Crows, Game of Thrones, Clash of Kings, Dance of Dragons. 4 rounds, no fire and blood.
Woo!
Yes, I think it makes a big difference to free folk.
Free for all.
Yeah, and way more free folk players doing well. T-Wood with his free folks doing decently. Euron in chat, he's smashing it out there. So it's good. It's good to see that. Even Gregor's a guy from, I believe, the UK, is at least forming and getting wins. I'm used to seeing from NRG the bottom. Oh, Crag's from your local game group, is he? Oh, I'm going to beat him then. Hey, no. Oh, it'd be a good game.
There are some really. I think this is a really competitive event. Actually,
Yeah.
like it's gone under the radar in terms of. It kicked off relatively soon after the NRG event. It's technically a UK-based event, but there are a ton of players from outside the UK, and there are some really big names in there, and there's some really big names who are not doing that well. Like they're mid-table. What's important is what should I say? Good players don't always win. The best player in any game doesn't even necessarily always win every game.
Yeah.
Just because if the player's skill is similar enough, there is a huge element of chance.
Of course, dice game.
Yeah, it's a dice game. It's a luck-based game on what you draw. Tactics cards can go against you. Varus rolls can go 4 out of 4 or 0 out of 4, and that can make or break a game. But we see a number of players who I think are very, very good players with very good ratings on the site who have done very well in other tournaments. And they're mid-table, bottom half of the table. So I think that it's really telling that there is a strong set of players here. It may not be the biggest event run. It may not be... but it's strong. It's strong. So, it's really interesting to see what wins here.
It's interesting for me, the Boards and Swords. Now, the thing that I like about this is that Boards and Swords didn't release the game modes before the tournament. They randomly draw them every round, and I think that's really interesting because it meant that when it was list building time, you had to build lists that were going to do 4 rounds. Now, they did say they took out the secret missions. Yeah, the secret objectives. They took those out because they're just generally not very well received by people. But then it was going to be a random selection of the rest. I think that's really interesting because there's no set guarantee as to what round you're going to be playing in any given time. And you had to prepare for all of them while not necessarily going to be encountering them. I think that's really interesting. Now I got lucky.
It is really interesting. It's definitely a way to do it. I had a very interesting conversation with Carl Kirsten, West Coast Bannerman, who so to kind of like preface the whole conversation, after the NRG event, I put out a Google poll, a Google Docs form where I asked what people's favorite game mode was, all these kind of things. And one of the questions was, do you prefer for the game modes to be known beforehand or not? And there was a overwhelming response that people would prefer to know. Or I believe actually I believe the way I worded the question was, do you believe it's more competitive to know what the game mode is before a tournament is started, or do you believe it's more competitive to not know the game modes? And the overwhelming response was that people believe it's more competitive to know the game modes. It's kind of a way that you will know what you're building for, and list building in that way could be considered part of the competition.
Bloodraven points out that that's the official way suggested by CMON as well. Announce the game modes, then have the tournament, right?
Actually, interesting. So I believe that Carl claims that CMON believe that any tournament which announces its game modes before it, shouldn't be considered when they consider game balance. So that's interesting. Carl has a long history with CMON. He was one of the first people to start running big events over in the US, and has had a lot of conversations with their with the people who run the kind of tournaments stuff and support the people who support CMON. So it was really interesting. The whole conversation kicked off because I worded the question as, do you believe it? Do you think it's competitive if I don't tell you what the game modes are? And he was like, what? I mean, it's considered not competitive if you do tell me the game modes, as far as CMON are concerned. So it was a super interesting conversation. I still think that it's interesting to have a pool and select from randomly.
Yeah.
My issue always has been is that if you don't tell me what the game modes are, then I feel that somebody has an innate advantage. I have turned up to tournaments before and then, found out on the day, despite the fact that there's a whole tournament doc written up and stuff like that, found out on the day after I've signed up that, oh, by the way, we don't play all these different game modes. And I'm like, well, okay, so massive amounts more information before the tournament starts than I do. And so everybody from your local club has a huge advantage over people who have traveled for this event.
Yeah.
And I just feel that when you don't tell everybody what's going to happen, somebody knows things that other people don't know. Even if it's just like, oh, this person, the TO doesn't like to play these game modes, so he'll just exclude them. He doesn't even have to write it down. So I've always thought that, like, if you just write it down and tell people exactly what's going to happen, then it's the most even, fair tournament. And I think that fairness is very, very important in these events.
I do like a lot of people in chat like the random though. A lot of people in chat, Chappelle, George, Bloodraven, Francesco, who I have no idea if he's got an easy name, but Francesco, he's saying that random is great. Euron, random is great. I think random's probably the way to go. I do think that rather than playing randomly draw for every player, every matchup being randomly drawn, it definitely needs to be a round that's randomly drawn, because obviously you could get let's take an example of Clash of Kings. You could get a free float player draw Clash of Kings every round. Statistically unlikely, but then you'd be like, well, yeah, of course they did well because they're playing like the statistically favored game mode for that faction. Now, I think that falls by the wayside. I think you should know the pool, and I think it should be randomly selected from the pool. I also think there shouldn't be repeats, although I actually do think that repeats could add an interesting idea.
It's an interesting dynamic. They are all interesting things. The keys are, for things to be fair, it has to be written down what the pool that you're going to select from is.
Yep.
Finding out on the day that some things just aren't in the pool isn't equal for everybody. I think that the size of the pool matters. Basically, there are two things that can happen, right? You can either play every game mode because you've got a really long tournament, a bit like NRG, a bit like Masters of Westeros. They had 6 rounds, 7 rounds, and they were just like, all right, the 7 game modes will basically play every game mode. But ideally, with the new beta game modes coming out and stuff like that, there will be a bigger list that you can select from. And basically, if you're randomly selecting from a pool, it's similar in terms of list building to assuming that you have to play every one. Except that you could kind of hedge your bets and build for some of them and just hope that the ones that you don't like don't come up.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting, you know? I do think that if you take Fire and Blood out of the pool, Free Folk are significantly the strongest faction in the game right now. Significantly so, in my opinion. But that's because I already believe that they're relatively balanced and even when you include Fire and Blood, and Fire and Blood is their massive hindrance. Yeah. It's the only game mode that they're not innately good at.
I would also, I mean, I'd also, as a mission, I actually love Clash of Kings, not because I like it for Free Folk. I actually like the idea. I like the idea that you're piling units in, and it's all about understanding how to win the attrition war effectively. But I also think that Clash of Kings needs to be looked at in terms of a balancing perspective. Insignificant, obviously very strong, so Night's Watch with the conscripts can work there. Obviously Free Folk, but also the way that you deploy on the flanks. There's so many FAQs regarding like attachments and like bring some bears. You know, everyone knows you don't bring the bear on at the flank, you bring it on in the main deployment. But then it's all like, well, hang on, how does it work with other things? There's a lot of interactions and FAQs I'd like to come out for Clash of Kings to sort that out. And maybe if it was taken out of the rotation for a while, as to let it simmer, to let it sort itself out, that would be good. I will say though, as a bit of a defense for myself. My opponent who I played against, I want to actually shout out my opponent I just played against in Clash of Kings. We played for an hour and a half, and then all of a sudden he had to disappear. He came back 10 minutes later, and his daughter had fallen off her bunk bed and broken her wrist. And so his wife was taking her to hospital, and I got a lovely picture of him in the hospital later on with his daughter. He'd gone after the game, he'd gone to kind of swap. I did say, you know,
hey,
we'll pause the game and we'll come back to it.
Guy knows. Guy knows how important it is.
Yeah, it turns out
is on the line here, Mickey.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
He had to stay home and look after.
Wait.
He had to stay home and look after his son while the parents arrived anyway. So you know, because he didn't want to take the son to hospital. But yeah, big shout out to him. And I got a lovely picture after the game with him, a little selfie at him and his daughter, and she was smiling like anything because she was clearly high on Calpol. Big shout out to Calpol there, best medicine. So yeah, I want a big shout out to him, but unfortunately he didn't kill a single one of my units. I played Clash of Kings.
Yeah. The whole story was just so you could slip that one in.
Of course it was. No, yeah. But I think that that says so much in the Free Folks' favour. I played a match and I didn't even lose a unit in Clash of Kings, which is all about recycling units, and I think that just says the strength of Free Folk right now is astronomical.
It also says, I mean, it's a totally different thing, but it also says something about TTS in general, which is TTS isn't the same as tabletop, and that's why there exists a TTS ranking and a tabletop ranking. And there are a lot of distractions in real life, and the TTS games can go on for a long time, and that doesn't favor some people. Some people play incredibly slowly on TTS, and some people can cope with that, and other people get really tilted by it. Without any fixed time limits on these games and stuff like that. I don't know what Mickey's trying to show there, but
breaking wrists.
Right. But yeah, there's things going on in other people's lives, and so that's why they're separate. Because they're not the same skill necessarily. I love a lot of things about TTS. I really love the preciseness of the movement. I hate sloppy kind of that's about right kind of movement on tabletop. Bad pivoting is a huge problem I have with the game. But TTS isn't perfect, and it's not for everybody. So you know, that's hopefully we're going to bring a ton more people to the site when tabletop starts again, because only some of the community play TTS.
Yep.
And only some of them enjoy it.
At this point, you mention movement on TTS, and a little thing that we've found out, isn't it?
Oh,
this is going to cause.
I wasn't even trying to segue into this, but here we go.
It's a good segue.
Mickey's.
Yeah, time to show you some people. Now, these units are not painted. Don't berate me for not having painted units. This is just the best I could come up with, given the relatively short notice we decided to do this.
Yeah, given only the couple of years that he's been playing Free Folk 4, he couldn't possibly have painted enough units to have 5 painted units on camera at the same time.
Who wants to paint raiders? They're really boring. I'm actually fed up of painting leather, and I've painted like 3 units, and I'm not even finished. Right, so here we have 3 units, and this is for argument's sake. They are just engaged like so. If this ever happens in a real game, you've probably lost the unit. Although saying that, Rose Knights exist, so maybe not. This is actually fairly.
By the way, I'll ask the chat now. Predictions on whether or not this has cost Mickey a game.
Predictions on whether or not this has cost Carlo a game. Because this is why
I'd already lost the game, to be fair.
Yeah. But no, it was an interesting one because this wasn't the reason I lost, actually. I lost for other reasons. I lost because I was bad. I played badly. And I'm not actually that good a player. But Carlo, because I watched Carlo live, I saw this happen and I realised that actually I was going to look into this. We've got a solo. Here he comes. There's a giant. He fits in there. Now,
far more realistic situation. It's a direwolf.
It's a direwolf. Let's pretend that this is a direwolf. Quick query. Does that giant fit in that gap? Let's see what people think. Yeses in chat while we just talk about other things. Does this giant fit in this gap? So, first builder league, Carlo, while we wait for people to see what they think about that. Are you enjoying first builder?
Am I enjoying it? Well, I probably didn't do the best thing, which was I happened to be out of the house up until about 20 minutes before the end of the round draw was supposed to be made. So it was a bit of a stressful period of trying to round up all the people who hadn't submitted their results. And probably one of my least good bit of TOing so far between the first builder and the NRG. But I think that people are enjoying it. I think that people are getting in the spirit of just playing some enjoyable games with some commanders and some army lists that they've never seen before. So from that perspective, it's gone pretty well. 80 player turnout. Already had a couple of dropouts, but that's kind of to be expected on TTS. So I think, yep, it's pretty good. It's been as successful as I kind of expected and hoped. And hopefully I won't kind of muck up the TOing next weekend.
I hope not. There's a lot that you want people to stream.
Trying to get better every week, but sometimes you get so comfortable with something that you think that you can do it in 20 minutes when it takes a little bit more than that to round everybody up.
Okay, back to our giants then. Back to our giants after you're talking about first builder league. Carlo, does it fit?
No, it does not fit.
So here we go. Here's me trying to make sure I don't move anything as I put this in. There we go. I've moved it directly forward. As you can see, it collides with the base just here. Some people say this is production. I know Blood Raven, you just said it was production error.
You say, okay, Michael Chanel says it's production. Michael Chanel says,
yep.
How could we possibly be millimeter accurate on our production? Okay, well, you can. But more to the point, the problem here actually is that this is multiple millimeters. We're not talking about like things not just fitting. Yeah, the camera is actually not very favorable to this. If you do it yourself, you realize that you're anywhere up to about 0.5 centimeter out.
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk about the whole issue since Mickey's brought it up. This has, in some ways, been answered a little bit by Michael Chanel a long time ago on Discord, where he said that a solo overhanging a unit back before 50% requirement for charges, he said that was not intended to be chargeable.
If you did something like that,
when that amount of overhang, so that is what we term production inaccuracy between these units, which is many millimeters off. So this, of course, is two solos being wider than the frontage of a cavalry or infantry-based tray. The old answer was that you weren't supposed to be able to clip a unit. That was not the intention for you to be able to charge that unit in the front with that amount of frontage. That in a lot of ways was cleaned up by requiring a 50% frontage covering. What that now means is if a solo is correctly positioned into a 50% alignment in front of an infantry unit,
Like
You
so.
cannot physically fit something into the flank with anything other than a 50% alignment because it clips the solo. This is indisputable in that it physically doesn't fit. I mean, you haven't. Okay, so what's the problem? What's the problem? The problem is that you're writing rules around something that you claim is a production issue, but God, it's sloppy production.
Yeah, I mean.
So the question is, so as Mickey said, unrealistic situation. But the real situation here is if Mickey takes away the unit on the far left of the screen, what has actually genuinely happened in both of our games and is a real situation is that he is attacked in the flank by a unit exactly as so. He is charged by a direwolf 50% and then charged by another direwolf in the front. And he physically cannot fit. But both times it was allowed to happen because A, in TTS, their bases do fit, and B, most people don't know. And even when TTS starts stacking them up all on top of each other and everything starts moving, people just ignore it.
Yeah, it is relevant to bears, of course, and giants. This is like, it's not just a nerf to wolves, it's actually relevant to bears and giants as well.
Very, very relevant to
but this
the
is
bears
something
fan.
I've already known, and this is why I don't think bears are as good as people say they are. But the reason we brought this up, actually, and I know it's production error, and I know that there is the likelihood that it could be production, but there's a very good reason, and it's because even if it is production, what we have to remember is we can only play with what we physically got. And if you're saying that we have to pretend that our physical models are different sizes to what they actually are, that's an issue.
Loris Tyrell.
Like,
I think we all have to pretend that Loris is about 25% bigger than he really is, right?
Yeah. That's actually like.
Pretend that Melisandre has a nose.
Those are actually serious issues from a gameplay perspective, though, because what you're saying is what is physically on the table actually isn't what's going on.
Yeah.
In terms of the game, and I don't like that. That's it's a little thing.
We're all sat here talking about this game because we love this game.
We do.
You know.
Yeah, we all love it.
Let's assume that. Yeah, let's just assume that. So I'm gonna tell you why I hate this game. But you have to know that I love this game. My room is full of models from this game. I spent all of my time building a website for this game. So I'm not just trying to shit on this game. Yeah. But you have to play to the rules that you've been given, and nothing allows this unit to fit because it physically doesn't fit. And nothing says in the rules, by the way, this is an error. It should fit. And just because you posted it on Discord does not make that a rule unless you're willing to admit it in a rule book. It doesn't exist, or at least on an official FAQ. Then that's not a rule. That's not how you go about writing rules. They do a lot of brilliant things in CMON. The War Council and giving away updates and erratas to units is amazing. You know, that's how everybody should be doing it.
100%.
But posting in somebody else's discussion on a Discord is not how you create rules and not how you create FAQs. That is terrible. So let's just go with the fact that you must play to the rules you've been given. Otherwise, you're not playing the game. You're playing your best approximation of what you think that the game should be.
Yep.
And your physical models don't fit. So they don't fit. That's how it goes. And that's how I will play to my death, because I am a rules as written player. Even if I believe that the intention is different, the only way for us to be absolutely fair to each other is to play the rules that are written down. So that's how we play.
And it's a little thing, but it's a big thing, I think. I certainly don't want to end there on that note, but it's a big thing because it's a horrible thing to talk about, rules lawyering. But it's hard to teach someone. This actually came about because trying to teach someone to play the rules, and actually you kind of have to go at points. That's not how that works, really, because that rule doesn't really work like that, and it's just not fun. It's not pleasant to have to explain all the intricacies of the rule to somebody. And with some units that actually they genuinely do want, you know, that they're starter units, things like Rickon. Oh, it says it has to be the last unit destroyed. Actually, it doesn't, because that's been FAQ'd, and that's fine. But why do I have to teach somebody that at day one when they want to run something they just want to run?
I think CMON show a little bit of their inexperience in dealing with a war game as opposed to a board game. When you make a board game, unless it turns out to be the new most competitive thing that ever existed, you release it out there and people play it, and they play it at home with their friends, with people that they know, and they figure it out. Maybe a rule's not super obvious. They Google it. Somebody's got an answer. First answer that they find, they think, yeah, cool, let's play it like that. And they just play it. And that's easy. A war game is different. A war game is competitive. A war game lives and dies by how strong your rule set is.
Yep.
And they are building weaknesses into the wording of the rules, which make things really, really tough for everybody. And my only concern is that they possibly seem to be getting worse at it, not better at it. The Baratheon heroes are really bad for how ambiguous their triggers are. Barristan Selmy is a huge discussion right now of to what targeting means. And maybe it's just a case of like
clearing up a couple of things here and there.
Right? Yeah. Maybe it's just a case of like, the game's getting slightly more complex, so more of these things come up, but they haven't resolved the old ones. They need to tighten up the old trigger wordings before they start trying to add new ones. They need to resolve the timings of these things without you having to sift through tons of forum posts, massively long Discord discussions, just to have an informed opinion. It's an informed opinion at that point as to what the majority of the community think the correct way for it to be played is, because there still isn't even a ruling. It's just what the majority of people have decided is probably the best way.
Yeah. And that's
I think CMON have accidentally made one of the best games out there, and they are surprised by how many people want to buy it. That's where the production is constantly behind. And they're surprised that people expect something of them that they're not used to doing, which is a rock solid rule set.
Yep.
Games Workshop have had literally 30 years to perfect this process. Privateer Press, been around forever. You know what I mean? Like all these people, but CMON are at their core board game makers. That's what they're used to. So I think they're just showing a little bit of an experience there, but I hope that they'll clean it up. I think that they could call it 1.6, they could call it 2.0, whatever. But I think they need to go back and take the big step, which they've avoided forever so far, which is they need to change tactics cards, the wording on them, not even necessarily the effects. The wording on the triggers needs to be sharpened up, and the wording in the rulebook needs to be sharpened up. And they have to, 100% in my mind, get away from this idea that because you've answered it on the Discord once, that's an answer. No, until it's written into the rulebook, it's not part of this game.
I also personally think that, and it's a huge thing in the Discord channels, and everyone here will probably agree and get behind it. There needs to be clear times, like clear flowcharts should be able to be built for the game as when triggers can be played. And people say that a trigger can happen at any time. Actually, it can't. Like, there is very defined steps to everything you do. And yes, between any two steps, there could be a trigger. And a trigger, or a step, could cause another trigger. And the trigger that you have then causes a bunch of more steps that could cause more triggers, right? It's an infinitely expanding loop, right?
But you can draw out every one of those loops. You should be able to write those loops down, and if you can't, then it's ambiguous.
Yeah.
And you will create arguments. If you can't write it down in a flowchart, the person who made it, then you will create multiple different opinions on what the correct implementation is.
Yeah. And you say Sansa any time, but any time's easy to build into any trigger. Any time is the easiest trigger to actually build into anything, because it's just a step that can happen at any point in the game, like literally any point.
Any time is every one of the other triggers.
Yeah. Card gets played.
You should be able to list all of the other ones.
The more important thing is with Sansa, if you're the aggressive player, I choose to do something. You can't then play a card, and then anytime a card back into my hand, and then play it as if I was playing that card when the trigger happened. Like
before the first one.
Yeah, that's breaking the rules of the game still. So yeah, little offshoot there. We'll go back to what the main focus was.
All positive.
Yeah, we want the game to do well because we actually care.
Yeah, we do.
That's the big difference.
I just want the game to be better. You know what I mean? I think the game can be better. I'm a perfectionist in everything I do and everything that I play. So I can see very simple ways that this game could be better, and so I want it. I want those things to be done.
Not convinced because your website's rubbish.
Whoa.
No, jokes. The website's
let's
great.
not throw shade there, buddy.
Next week, it's Carlo alone.
My life. That's 3 months of my life, thank you, Miggy.
Yeah, I know, right? Get a job, you bum. No. Right. We've talked about first builder quickly. We want to talk about upcoming ones. I think we're winding down towards the end of the stream. Last couple of minutes. We want to talk about upcoming things. You'll see if you go to the main page. Let's jump to the main page quickly. Laughter is poison to fear. This is the replacement to Gen Con /
yep. An effort at.
Con, yeah.
Yeah, I believe Simon
slightly
attending. Involved. Yeah. We'll see what happens.
This is run up in. It's no good for us. It's run up in Indianapolis, in the USA. Physical tournament over 2 days. Brett, I believe, is heading it up. So if Brett's still here, I'm sure you can get in contact with Brett on the Discord anyway. Find out more information if you are local. What other tournaments have we got? We got some TTS one, haven't we? Yeah, the Northern Front TTS. Keister, who ran Assault on River Run, is now running this one.
Skirmish at the Twins has a similar style to the First Builder League. It's randomly assigned factions, but not randomly assigned commanders. With a bit of a control of factional balance, as we kind of realized that maybe I was a bit optimistic in the amount of people who are playing neutrals in Assault on River Run. Sorry, in the First Builder.
Fargo Hote.
Probably shouldn't be balanced. Exactly.
Fargo Hote.
July is month of the goat.
July.
Everybody knows. Yes, so I think he's still looking for entries. It's free entry, and I believe that there are actually some prizes. So definitely, it's all really interesting stuff. It's, again, slightly off meta. 30-point limit. Let's point that out. 30-point limit. I believe we haven't seen a 30-point competition run through stats yet.
No.
But yeah, 5-round event with random entries.
2 beta game modes. I'm not. No, I can't enter this one.
Busy. Yeah, I'm in it. So if you want to come get some easy ranking points, then come try and get a game against me.
What did you get by any chance?
Oh, that would
go on.
Telling.
You can reveal your faction. Come on.
Yeah, I got Baratheons, which I was quite pleased at because I guess there's something that I want to play more of, and I want to have a good practice with. But
you're running Stannis, yeah? Running Stannis Commander with the Double Warden, Cutthroats, R'hllor Faithful, Red Priestess?
That's a 40-point list.
Oh,
that's a 40-point list.
Just get rid of the two. Just get rid of the two Wardens.
I will almost definitely run Courtney, and I think maybe I will pair it with Davos, but I need to think about the ramifications of... so once if I'm pretty sure I'm running Courtney, the question is I try and work out which game modes I'll run Courtney into. And then I will see what commander I think fills those massive gaping weaknesses that Courtney might have. And it'll probably be Davos, because it will probably be movement-based problems.
Things like Game of Thrones,
particularly Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is terrible for the Renly side of things. If you're going to run a load of things with movement 4, you can't start 6 inches onto the board with a load of objectives that are right in the middle, because you're too slow to get there. Your opponent just drops a Bog, a Corpse Pile, whatever. It takes you like 3 turns just to get to the middle to contest the objective. Yeah. So, yeah, it's probably Davos. It's almost definitely Courtney, probably paired with Davos. That would be my answer if we were talking about 40 points. I haven't thought through the whole ramifications of how 30 points changes things.
Yeah.
For me, I think it even more empowers an NCU commander, because I think activation size and having as many combat units on the board as possible is even more important.
Quite like
in my opinion, if
Fire and Blood
you
there,
know,
though. You could probably run a 3 combat unit Fire and Blood list. You could probably make it to
could
work, maybe something like Here We Stand or Feast for Crows, maybe, or Light in the Darkness,
yeah,
I don't know.
but that'd be super strong for Courtney already. That Fire and Blood bit. So
we'll see.
yeah.
We'll see. So anyway, other ones we've
who knows
got.
what I'll turn up with.
There's there's a TTS all face-to-face event. First whose name Gold on Dice, running Malta. I know nothing about this, but there's 16 people who've entered.
So a lot of people obviously, feel free to just create events on the site. You don't need to contact me or anything like that. Hopefully everything's fine. But if you have any issues or you want any help, then feel free to contact me. This is odd. It is technically a physical event, but there are people who I see here. I recognize some names of Australians.
He's not going to Malta.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be playing there. I'm not even 100% convinced that the physical store that it's based around is in Malta, though it might be. I guess we could probably look it up of where the TO himself is registered at. But
it's cool, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very interesting concept of being able to play in physical if you can, because that would be most people's preferred choice. If I could go and play these people in person, I would do that over playing them on TTS any day.
Yeah.
But being able to expand it out and have your local group all enter, but also have the ability to pool a wider pool of players and get more players involved by allowing TTS as well is brilliant compromise, and something that I literally never considered myself.
Yeah. Other things. We've got French tournament. You have been talking with the French, haven't you, Carlo?
Trying, but as you saw, I couldn't even work out whether or not it necessarily said Kickstarter exclusives allowed or Kickstarter exclusives denied at the very start. We must have been about 5 hours ago before we started ranting.
Wow. My understanding is you've been talking with the French. Is that an announcement you want to make tonight, or is that something you want to wait in the wings with?
Well, I mean, it's not my announcement in any way. The French are organising Masters of Westeros again. It'll be Masters of Westeros 2. Hopefully, hopefully they will choose to run it through a Song of Ice and Fire stats. They are talking about it. The issue is for a long time, Central Europe have used a place called T3 or Tabletop Tournier or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, for an English-speaking person, I had literally never heard of it. People in the UK, people in the US, people who speak English have never heard of this site. But it seems very popular in Europe because it is actually possibly has multiple languages that you can select or whatever. It is in French, which is why it's popular for the French and why it's their general go-to. So, I hope that they'll want to use a Song of Ice and Fire stats, because Tabletop Tournier doesn't do anything for the community outside of
doesn't even record lists
being able to run the event.
Does it just records.
It doesn't really. Yeah, it doesn't let everybody. It hasn't got worldwide appeal in any way. But that's classic. A classic English speaker saying, "You don't have worldwide appeal unless you're using an English site." So use an English site. That's just ignorance, isn't it? Hopefully, hopefully, the French have been huge users of the site. The French have run a TTS event. I have Google Analytics, which tells me that tons of people who come to the site are from France. Slightly less so the Germans too. A lot of Germans come to the site. There is a list behind me. It's actually probably like around here, somewhere like that. It's on my wall of all the things that I'm working on. And, somewhere on that list is that we will provide language options. But that's a huge undertaking. And there are like physical things that the code itself still needs to be improved. The functionality of the site, there are still so many things that we can do to make it better for everybody that undertaking a whole language conversion is like a huge thing that, you know, will happen at some point if it's popular. If you use the site, then I'll look to make it better for you. If you don't use the site, maybe I'll try and make it more popular for you. But really, I want to concentrate on the people who do use the site. I want people who do use the site to enjoy it and get the best out of it. French have been using it, and I do want to make it as easy an experience for them as possible. In the short term, that's like making the English as plain, as simple as possible. And in the long term, that's providing a whole button that you just click and the whole site will turn French.
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll move. I'm way more importantly, hopefully I'm going to go to Paris, depending on where coronavirus is at, and compete in Masters of Westeros myself. That is nothing to do with whether or not they run it on a Song of Ice and Fire Stats. I will tell you right now that I, as a user of a Song of Ice and Fire Stats, would massively prefer it was run on a Song of Ice and Fire Stats, because I do care about my ranking and I want to play in a ranked-based event rather than something that's on Tabletop Tournier, which I believe they have some kind of ranking system, but honestly, I've looked at it and it's a pile of crap. That's not how that's not how rankings work. I'm sorry. If you think that's how rankings work, then you don't understand good mathematical ranking systems. And I've looked at it, and it's a site that got popular, which they tagged a ranking system onto, rather than a ranking system which decided to create a tournament system.
So yeah,
where the heart of your site lies, and the heart of the site lies, the heart of a Song of Ice and Fire Stats lies in providing mathematical statistics to the user base. And the other one decided that they had tons of results, so they might try and do something useful with it. Hey, super controversial, but that's the same problem with the builder. You know, they've got a load of people using it, and so they decided to tag some stats onto the back end, but they're not built. They don't have inbuilt mathematics the way a Song of Ice and Fire Stats does.
No. Plus, you know, you've got a doctor on that side of the screen. On that side of the screen, you've got a doctor working on it, and you've got a university maths graduate on the other side. So, I mean, everything we do is mathematically.
I mean, it's not what's the best way to put it? I'm not a website developer. I'm a statistician. That's my professional background. I understand the ranking parts of things. The website is the best thing that I can do. And that's why everything takes so long, and sometimes things break and all the buttons don't look as pretty as they should look, and everything took a long time to build. The maths is absolutely rock solid. There is nothing wrong with the maths. There are a handful of people in the world who know more about the statistical mathematics that this is built on than me. I have a PhD in it.
Yeah, it's anyway, we're not going to go down that route. It's just getting our dicks out and swinging them around.
Hey, these are the rants that normally get cut out of all those other videos that you watch. Yeah.
Honestly,
Mickey, you were supposed to filter this bit, so we never got to this part. You were supposed to segue the conversation off into something that you know, didn't get us into trouble.
Okay then. I've got nothing left because we have all the interesting stuff talked about.
Yeah,
I guess
Masters of Westeros. I'm super pleased. It's coming sometime in the fall. They're organizing it at the moment. As far as I know, it absolutely will happen, and hopefully it will happen on a Song of Ice and Fire Stats. But I can't promise you that at all. The TOs are currently talking to me about whether or not Song of Ice and Fire Stats does all the things that they want it to do.
Which it will do by the time it comes around. I'm sure it will.
Yeah, hopefully, you know. But I try never to promise things that that aren't guaranteed. And like I say, I'm an amateur coder, so I almost promise nothing. I promise nothing until it's built, because everything that I do, I'm doing for the first time ever.
Yep. There is a tournament, any UK viewers, there is a tournament in Scotland running in October, except that John Craig, the guy who runs, what's he called? The Scottish podcast. Forgotten what it's called.
Or is it called
Always Winter? Yeah,
Always
Always Winter.
Or...
Yeah, their podcast. John Craig, the runner of Always Winter.
Beautiful Thistle. Yeah. Picture.
He's running a tournament in Scotland, but we don't know exactly when, because it was scheduled for a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? But of course, that all got cancelled. Right.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I believe I saw the venue is basically opening up again, so it definitely will run at some point in the future. It's just about getting a date penciled in and organising it. So yeah, hopefully I'll be at. I'm pretty sure I'll be at that one
because
that
one's
won't we? Less of a trek and stuff like that. But yeah, they got a really competitive group up there as well. So
and nice guys as well. They're really pleasurable to play against.
Yeah, exactly. Not necessarily entirely dedicated to Song of Ice and Fire, as tons of people aren't. You know, I wonder how much of a hit Song of Ice and Fire might take right currently with the new launch of 40k, the new edition. I hope that there won't be any kind of. I hope that it won't lose momentum.
I personally, you've only got to look at the Discord. Not many people are taken by. I think everyone who's come to Song of Ice and Fire Stats has played 40k at some point and is like, yeah, it's okay. Yeah. We've been there. We've done the GW thing. It's the rules is just bucket loads of dice. Always has been, hasn't it?
Yeah. And it's but just with the site and other things like that, you know, all these things are continuous improvement is more important than where you are right now. As long as you're willing to improve, that's the most important part. And I think that they have shown with the 1.5 balance that they're willing to address problems. I hope that they continue to do it. I hope that 1.6 will be better. They've shown with the War Council app and stuff like that they're not gonna make you pay with your wallet because they improved the game. No. They're gonna use improving the game to help grow it in general, and that's all brilliant trajectory and brilliant places that it can go. To me, is the only unfortunate thing is that it's not more popular than it is. You know, like it's a better game than I played all these other games. You know, I played Marvel Crisis Protocol, I played Fantasy, I played 40k, I played tons of games to relatively competitive levels. You know what I mean? Like I don't play anything to not competitive levels. When I play to win. I play to be the best I can be. I don't play these games casually. I enjoy playing them. And the pure rule set that they're built on by vast majority not as skillful as a Song of Ice and Fire stats. As a Song of Ice and Fire. I say Song of Ice and Fire stats so often these days that I can't even not the two things are just the same thing in my mind. I think I said it on the phone to somebody the other day by accident. But yeah, so I think that's a brilliant game, and I hope that they will continue to improve it because there's no game I'd rather play. Simple as that.
Bruce saying some interesting stuff in chat there. Yeah, hopefully with the Greyjoy release, we'll see some good stuff. Especially if they release the Greyjoys like we expect. Greyjoys. Yeah. Because you know, just again, not a starter.
They've realized they've shown that they're willing to learn from what the community want when they turned around and said, "Look, we're going to give you more on release than just the starter set." Because the starter set just makes for bad games when played into more competitive factions, fully fleshed out factions, and the problems that Baratheons and Targaryens have both had upon release will hopefully not exist for Greyjoys just because they've learned from the mistakes that they've had in the past. And they said, all right, look, that's not how things work. We've realized that actually you need these other competitive tools when you first get released. And in future, you're going to have them. You're going to have Targaryens. You're going to have Greyjoys as one big release. So they're willing to admit their mistakes and learn from their mistakes. And that's the most important part.
Right then, we will leave it there. We'll start wind down there. We've had enough of me. These thanks a lot for coming down. First of all, to anyone who's watched this live. If you're watching it recorded, whatever, that's fantastic as well. If you are here though, make sure you drop a subscribe. It's completely free on YouTube. Hit the notification bell as well. You'll get notified every time we put a video up. We are looking to run this weekly. This is something we will run weekly at 7 GMT plus 1. That's 7 o'clock UK time.
We'll have nothing left to talk about next week.
We will. Make sure there is. We'll focus on some other stuff as well. We'll be looking... This one went a bit longer because we know it's a starting point. Yeah. We were looking at about an hour to an hour and a half, depending on how much there is to talk about. Yeah, that's really it from us. Obviously, keep using the site. That's what we want to hear. Don't just use community games, tournament games. Put your... casual games on there as well.
Every game matters.
Every game.
Yeah. Every penny matters. No, but seriously, as far as I'm concerned, as long as you are playing to win. Like as long as you are not just like testing out whether or not this charge is theoretically possible, as long as you like turn up and say, hey, look, I want to play a game and I would like to have a chance at winning it, then your game should be submitted to the site. It will reflect how strong those two commanders are. Even if you don't think that you're fielding a top tier list, if a commander's strength is not based only on a single list build that it can be built into, and a faction's strength is not reflected, the Stark faction strength is not reflected only in the Direwolf spam list. It is a reflection of how strong the Starks are across the spectrum. Yep. And all the stats on the site, they reflect what submissions it receives. And right now, recently, it's received a lot of tournament data and it reflects high tier tournament play. If you want it to be more reflective of what you play, then just submit more data. Also, you will hopefully very soon, that big list of things. The main thing about that list of stuff on that wall is that Song of Ice and Fire Stats is going to look to help with the learning side of things a lot more. It's gotten to a point where tournaments can run relatively efficiently, relatively well, and that is big for the attention that it gets and the amount of people submitting. Now we're going to use all that information that you've given to help you as a user learn things yourself about how to be better. It'll tell you your best faction, your worst faction, how to counter your worst faction, how to play into that commander that keeps beating you. And these are all the kind of things that my crazy amount of statistical knowledge can hopefully tell us.
We're going to get some other interesting things come soon as well, which we don't want to talk about today because they're still
don't promise anything until it's ready.
But
real soon.
Yeah, soon it will be the full package that we hope to bring to you guys, and you can use it for everything that you'd want to use it for. And it should be, Bloodraven say you're too lazy to put everything on there. You might be lazy at the moment, Bloodraven, but if it's already on there and you just have to click a couple of buttons, we take away the barriers. That's what me and Carlo like to do. Remove the barriers, make it easier.
Yeah. I mean, if you let me know what your barriers are, then like I can try and remove them. I can try and make things easier. But like all I can try and do is give you back stuff for having submitted. Like there has to be a reason for you to want to submit. Obviously, otherwise, I'm just asking you to do me a favor or you to do the community a favor. And that's what the next part is coming. It will tell you and it will give you stuff back for having submitted. Because at the moment, everybody who submits and those who don't submit all get the same amount back. They can all see all the statistics and they're not personalized in the way that they can be. But it takes time, but it's coming.
Definitely. And on that note, we'll end it there. As I said, drop us a subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. We'll join you same time next week when we'll probably talk about the end of Boards and Swords, which hopefully I'll be holding my trophy.
Obviously, I might tell you about his amazing prizes that he's won.
I think it's store credit. But anyway, no, it's not about that. It's about us sharing experience, the tournament, the site, and also listening to you guys. Tell your friends to come down, tell them to watch it, tell them to come back and hopefully watch some of the content here. But also, where we are on Discord. I post a lot on Discord. I've got a big mouth. And Carlo doesn't post as much, but he does lurk.
Mm-hmm. I'm a lurker.
Tell us, Mickey, that event that you did on Monday was rubbish.
Yeah.
If you want us to talk about something on Monday's tournament chat, just let us know. Tournament ground will continue to go, and we'll be here every week. So yeah. Aside from that, guys,
tell us who you want to do a Commander Spotlight on.
Yeah, join the Facebook group.
I'll do my best. And if it has a cool tactics card, I promise I'll shout it out.
This is probably like the least official way I can do this because it's like loading up my personal Facebook.
Show everybody what your Facebook stream looks like.
I know, right?
Have you not got the new dark look Facebook on? Oh
no,
yeah,
of course not. This is an odd one, isn't it? What groups are we part of? This is me finding the Song of Ice and Fire group badly. So Song of Ice and Fire group, there we go. We post all the things in here. We'll do polls. We get a couple of other shared streams and things. But more importantly, we see Stannis. We decided to choose over Blackfish, but Blackfish is on the list as things stand.
Yeah.
Armor's up there as well. So get yourself in there. Get yourself voting. You can add your own options. You know, if you want to see a commander and you want to see people voting for it, add your own in as well. We added Robin originally.
I can't do miracles. I can't tell you how to win with Vargo. No, seriously. Unfortunately, Vargo doesn't have enough submissions to really talk about in any statistical way, which is why the first build of the league kind of exists. Yeah. But yeah, you know, I think Blackfish is a good one because he actually just
don't go into a rant. Just save it for the video.
Stannis just went even lower than Blackfish, but Blackfish is generally, a lot of people say that he's strong, and yet he like Renly, like Stannis, is incredibly lowly ranked. So
we've also got Rob. I think the one I did want to shout out, we put Rob on the list and no one voted for him.
Yes. Yeah, nobody wants to hear about Rob no more.
Nah, he's boring. Anyway,
he's old news.
Get yourself to the group, get yourself voting. You know, get there, post questions, ask questions, tell us what you think. And I think at that, Carlo, was there any final comment you wanted to go?
Nah, thanks for turning up, guys. Because you know, like it keeps me going. Because otherwise, in general, I'm just kind of coding and hope that people like the stuff that I work on. If you want me to work on something, then tell me, because as soon as I get an idea and I think that people care about it, I make it really fast. And when I don't, I'm kind of just fishing around for things that could be improved. But it's hard to know what you think could be better. So just let me know. Yeah. And we'll catch you next week. Take it easy, guys.